Nowadays, most people use social network sites and we share a lot of information about us, but also we get information from other people. In fact, people might influence our decisions recommending different apps or trends. For example, I can buy an Apple Watch because every time I use Instagram, there is an advertisement about it. Then I begin to find it attractive, and suddenly I want to start exercising. I think the same happens with our desires, and I'd like to emphasize this. Several participants in the study showed that they were struggling with their body image. Their struggle could be due to all the social media they are exposed to, because comparing ourselves to others can really affect us. Or from a more positive point of view, they could have been influenced by learning all the benefits a healthy lifestyle brings. So we must be careful in regard to users and what personal tracking devices are being used for. I believe that it is a double edged sword. So, my suggestion would be to implement a different methodology or restrictions for users to make a proper choice in order to really benefit their health and not the opposite.
Sensors, tracking devices, and self monitoring health apps are growing super quickly. They promise to boost well being and allow us to be in control of our own health. Being able to see visuals of data collected on things like heart rate, distance, and steps walked, calories burned, menstrual cycle, all that information gives us the power to use that data to improve our lives for the better. So, self monitoring is becoming a new way of life. Some health applications provide people the ability to share their health progress with their friends or family on social media. That could be beneficial or not. For some patients, wearable technology offers them real help in terms of regaining control over their health, like the example of the cancer survivor who has been able to track data on things like HRV, which stands for heart rate variability, DNA testing, and biofeedback meditation. So, for doctors, patient data might help them make quicker and better diagnoses and decisions on treatment options. It's predicted that voice tracking technology might soon be able to tell us about our mental state and serve as an early predictor of depression. So, while wearables and self monitoring health apps have been useful, can they do they provide data that's completely accurate? How do we know that? That's something I was wondering. So is there like a time or scenario when technology like this can actually fail or give us the wrong or inaccurate information? There might be potentially harmful consequences if the data that we see is wrong. So, for example, period tracking apps can sometimes incorrectly predict the date of a woman's menstrual cycle. So, while self monitoring apps seem promising enough, we need to think about potential negative consequences like the one I mentioned as well.
So, what I learned about personal informatics is that when using tracking apps, people use more than one tracker at the same time, and that people can switch trackers very often. There's different habits when people use tracking apps. They may want to track everything with a lot of accuracy, or they may only use their tracking apps occasionally in short bursts and may not care about the accuracy of the information they're collecting. So there's also 5 different types of tracking that are identified. The first is directive tracking, where it's very goal driven. If a person's using a tracking app to count their steps, they may want to walk 10,000 steps a day. Or documentary tracking, where people are just interested in the information that's being collected rather than trying to use the data to change a habit that they already have. Diagnostic tracking, which is trying to find a link between 2 different types of data. For example, sleeping and eating, seeing how sleeping affects their eating habits, how their eating habits affecting their sleeping habits. Collecting rewards is another type of tracking where people try to reach some kind of achievement or break a record to win some kind of competition, maybe. And fetishized tracking, where people are just keeping data for the sake of collecting the data and they're just interested in the app's or technology that they're using. So I feel for tracking apps to be used effectively in a medical context, considering how all these different apps are being used, the different types of apps available, the different habits people have when using them, that people need to be told how the data from these tracking apps are being used. For example, if an obesity patient is using a tracking app to track how much food they're eating, then they need to be told how the data from that food tracking app is being used. That way they may be more incentivized to keep using the tracking app every day and care about the accuracy of the data they're collecting. Whereas if they're not told how their data is being used, or if their data is being used at all, then they may not be using the tracking app every day, and it may not be collecting very accurate information.
The wearable tech era has arrived among us, and digital technologies are great in life. They've helped us immensely in detecting early illnesses, or whether it's just like a little personal goal of yourself of walking 10,000 steps in a day. It's great and all, but it does raise some privacy issues. You know, you have your watch on, your Fitbit on all day, and you're tracking, it's consistently recording your information as you go throughout the day. But where does this information go? Who manages this information? Is it doctors? Is it the developers? Like, where does this information lie? Is it HIPAA compliant? Nobody knows. And with all this information running around, you think this needs to be regulated. And if so, when will it be? You know, a bunch of people take these data into records, and they don't necessarily look at all the factors that can be considered. You know, when you visit a doctor and he looks at all your recordings from your digital device, he's going to say like, well, no wonder your foot hurts. It's because you walked 10,000 steps today.